Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome along to the Horse Racing channel with me, Paul Alster. I'm looking forward to what's going to be a big week ahead with three terrific days racing on the Mile at York. And then after that, we'll have even more to look forward to as we go on to the Lockinge Stakes that takes place at Newbury. Well, unfortunately, Izzy Phillips isn't here with us today, but she'll be still having some input into this look ahead. I can promise you that. She'll be back for the next bulletin. But as I say, we're heading to York this week. It's the Dante meeting. It's always a cracking meeting. The weather is set fair in Yorkshire, so I think we're going to see, pretty quick ground throughout the meeting, and that could affect the size of the fields. Now, with this conversation I'm having with you here, I'm just going to look ahead at the one or two big races on each of the 3 days, because at the time of this recording, we don't have the finalized fields, but we're going to just have a look and see what could be in store and what horses we're likely to be seeing. Now, on day one at York, they're saying it's probably going to be good to firm ground, and the first big race on Wednesday, the 14th of May, is the 1895 Duke of York Clipper Stakes. Now, this is a Group 2 race. It's a really solid Group 2 sprint. There's 150 grand in the pot. And the horse that has been made favourite here is Inish Erin. And Inish Erin is trained by Kevin Ryan, and very significantly, Ryan Moore has already been jocked up. Now, this is quite a few days ahead, so it looks like Kevin Ryan was very keen to get Ryan Moore on his side. And he's put in early as the 9-4 favourite. Now, I'm not really one to generally be following favourites, but I have a feeling that this week at York, rather similarly to what we've just seen in the week gone by at Chester, it's going to be pretty tough on the bookmakers, with the big races going to fancied horses and indeed those right at the head of the market. Inish Erin, well, we know what a good horse he is. Last season, he won the Group 2 at Haydock, the Sandy Lane Stakes, having disappointed at Newmarket in the Guineas, the 2000 Guineas before that. Indeed, with the exception of his final run last season, when he was probably over the top after a long campaign, the only place that Inish Erin has been beaten is at Newmarket. He's been beaten there 3 times, but he's won everywhere else. And he went on, of course, to win at Royal Ascot with a blistering performance in the Commonwealth Cup. That was on fast ground, over 6 furlongs, not an undulating track like Newmarket. And I think he's going to have a lot going for him. He also won first time up last season, winning a novice stakes at Newcastle. I think he might be hard to beat. Kevin Ryan's horses have been coming to the track in these first 6 weeks of the season or so, really wound up and ready to go. So he could be the one that is going to prove hard to stop. And at the time of this recording, on the Sunday before the big meeting starts, he's around a 9-4 shot. The other horses that are prominent in the betting, well, Night Raider for Carl Burke, very progressive towards the end of last season, but on a lower level and on the all-weather as well. So he's got a little bit, I think, to prove. He's a 7-2 second favourite, which seems short to me. Rated £7 higher is his stable companion Elite Status, who disappointed on his last 2 starts of last season, but previously had looked really progressive. And I have to say, Marshman, he's a good sort. He's been running well through the winter, and Kurdos, they may well show up. But if it's fast ground, we'll have a reduced field. I feel Inish Erin will turn up, and I think he probably, if he does, he'll be, one to very much have on your side. So that's the first of the 2 big races on day one. The Duke of York. The other one, of course, is the Oaks Trial, the Musidora Stakes, the Tattersall's Musidora, surprisingly worth less than the sprint, 130,000 for the 3-year-old fillies over 1.25 miles. And on the early betting, there's no obvious standout candidate. And I've had a look through this race, and my main note I've made for this is that it doesn't look, on the face of it at this point, a great race. But of course, something could emerge and put in a blistering performance and all of a sudden go storming to the head of the Oaks market. Serenity Prayer for Andrew Balding is the mount of Ryan Moore, whose rides are going to be short prices all week because Ryan's on fire, riding at about a 50% strike rate over the last fortnight. And it's one of Aiden, at Newbury on its debut in mid-April. So, didn't race as a 2-year-old. Lots of improvement sure to come after that 1.25 mile maiden win. Rafe Beckett, well, he's got possibly Smoken, who was a listed winner on its second start. It's 2 from 2 coming into this. Both wins, though, came on heavy and soft ground last season. Will it be as effective on the fast ground? And of course, with all the 3-year-old fillies and colts, the big question you've got to ask yourself is, have they trained on? Because you can never be sure until they actually get to the race course and get stuck in. And we'll find out about Smoken. Now, Aidan O'Brien doesn't have a great record in this race, and there's not many group races you can say that about Aidan O'Brien, but he's won it only once in the last 10 years, and he's had a stack of horses that have gone there fairly fancy and got stuffed. So he's got the likes of Whirl and Ecstatic in the race. I wouldn't be overly excited about either of those. I think if I was to put one up as one to keep an eye on in this race, it would be the filly trained by John Thady Gosden, who's unbeaten in 2 starts on the all-weather, both at Lingfield, in December on debut over a mile, and then just a couple of weeks ago, up to 1.25 miles, winning a novice stakes very comfortably indeed at long odds on. The name of the filly is Go Go Boots. Kieran Schumacher rides, or is jocked up to ride, I should say, and it will be fascinating to see if Kieran does ride, given that, of course, he's no longer on a contract with John and Thady after the defeat of Field of Gold in the 2,000 guineas. I don't know what you think about that. I think he was a little bit hard done by, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. The significant point here is that Go-Go Boots represents the Gosdens, and John Gosden in particular has won this race 5 times in the last 10 years. So he knows the type of filly that can win a race like this. She's got to improve on what she's done so far, but she's a 5-to-1 shot. So she's probably the one that I'd be looking at. So that's day 1 of the York Dante Festival. Well, we move on to day 2 of the York Dante meeting, and this one is an absolute cracker, because this is Thursday the 15th of May, and it is going to be Dante Day, the big Derby trial at York on Thursday. The going is expected to still be quick, good to firm, and as I said on day 1, I think we might see smaller fields than are usually the case on the Naves Mire at this time of year. Now, the horses I'm discussing here and the suggestions that I'm throwing out there are not my final view on the race. If you want to get my final view, then you can go to Out in Front at Patreon, where I have my overnight analysis and selections for all the big meetings, and it's definitely worth a look. At Chester, for example, last week, 12-to-1 winner on day 1, 10-to-1 winner on day 2, from just a couple of selections each day, and a 14-to-1 shot placed in the Chester Cup on day 3. So that's the type of things, hopefully, you can expect. I'm going to take you, though, to the first big race on Wednesday, because that is the Group 2 York 313 race. It's called the Al Basti Equiworld Dubai Middleton Fillies Stakes. And this is a race for 4-year-olds and upwards, so none of the classic generation horses. Now, this is a race in which there's a particular horse of interest, because it's one that our very own Izzy Phillips suggested as her older horse to follow this season. And Kalpana is the filly. Kalpana is trained by Andrew Balding, and Asheen Murphy is expected to ride, assuming she does run. And she was, as Izzy pointed out in our 10 to Follow video, which you can find in the archive here at the Horse Racing Network. This filly was very progressive last season, improving through handicaps and listed races. She was 3rd at Royal Ascot in the Ribblesdale. Then she won at Hamilton last season in the Glasgow Stakes, before going on to win the September Stakes at Kempton, and finally on soft ground at Ascot, winning the Quipco British Champion Fillies and Mares, that Group 1 there over very nearly a mile in testing ground, where she beat Wingspan. So she made massive progress last season, improving 40 pounds, very nearly 3 stone. Now, we can't expect us to make that sort of improvement again, of course, but if she can improve a pound or 2 more this season, she is going to be up there and contesting a lot of big races, the likes of your Coronation Cups and maybe the Eclipse, and maybe back at York in the big meeting in August to run in the big international stakes. So Kalpana, I think, if she does show up, is one to very much keep on side. And I think in a race where there are quite a few horses that need to improve a little bit, she is one that stands out as having been there and done it. But if there is one that I would suggest as potentially going to shake her up, it could be Nakil, who's trained by Owen Burrows and the mount of Jim Crowley, according to the early jockey bookings. This filly was really progressive once she stepped up last season. She won, admittedly, over 1.75 miles at the end of the season at Doncaster over the Ledger course and distance, but she was quick enough to win a good Ascot maiden at this trip and finish third at Goodwood in the Agnes Kaiser Phyllis Stakes. I think she's just a really nice kind of a filly. And Owen Burrows' horse is absolutely flying. So don't be surprised to see Nakil run a big race at decent odds. But she'll have to improve a bit to serve it up to Kalpana. Now, the other big race, of course, is for many people the big race of the whole meeting, this terrific York Dante fixture. If you've never been to York, this is the meeting to go to, because while there are other great meetings, the John Smith meeting there in July, of course, and then, of course, throughout August, the Ebor fixture, those wonderful 4 days. The crowds are so big at those other 2 meetings. You can't get to see a lot sometimes. You've got to fight your way through to get a pint, or if you're a bit flush, get something at the seafood bar. The May meeting, it's just a delight. Loads of room to move around, all the great facilities, great horses to enjoy, and very often very agreeable weather as well. That's what I'll be hoping for anyway. And I've got my collar and tie on Thursday. Now, the 3:45 York is the Albasti Equiworld Dubai Dante Stakes. I was there last year when William Haggis's big gangly horse, the Economics, won, and he was breathtaking, really, to say he wasn't the finished article. Of course, he wasn't able to show completely how good he was later in the season, but he still was a terrific horse, and it's been won by some great horses over the years. And of course, all the talk is about Aidan O'Brien's runner, the Lion in Winter. Now, this horse is unbeaten. He was, of course, strongly fancied in the anti-post markets for the 2,000 guineas after winning at the Curragh last season on debut, and then coming to York and over 7 furlongs, winning the Group 3 Acomb Stakes, which turns out to be a vintage renewal because Wimbledon Hawkeye, who's going to reoppose possibly in the Dante, was second. And then the subsequent 2,000 guineas winner, Ruling Court, was back in third behind the Lion in Winter. Now, he's going to go for the Derby, all being well. And that's the point I want you to consider here, because Aidan O'Brien has gone on record in recent days as saying, at best, the Lion in Winter is only going to be 80 to 90% fit. So they're not going to knock 7 bells out of him, for want of a better phrase, in order to win the Dante and leave the Epsom Derby behind on the turf on the Knavesmire. I think they'll obviously be hoping to win, but they won't want to give him a very, very hard race. And because of that, this could be the time to take on the Lion in Winter. I think he's going to go really well at Epsom, all being well, and it'll take a good one to beat him if he goes there. But I suspect that Godolphin have a likely sort here at an each-way price, certainly at this point, around 7-1, biggest price. Alpine Trail, who is another unbeaten horse. Alpine Trail for Charlie Appleby and William Buick, who, of course, did that legendary double in the 1,000 and 2,000 guineas. Charlie Appleby can't stop training winners at the moment, and his horses are arriving spot on and ready to roll. Now, Alpine Trail won. He didn't race at 2, so he was given time. He made his debut in February at Wolverhampton. He won a little novice stakes there. Then he went to Yarmouth, carried his penalty, won by nearly 4 lengths there, over 1.25 miles. And then he stepped up to listed company at Newmarket a couple of weeks ago, and he won really nicely, showing a good attitude. Nebras, who's no mug, came at him over on the far side as they went down into the dip. Looked like it might well go by, but the moment he heard the other horse come to him, he picked up and went again. That suggests to me this horse will certainly stay the trip, we know that, but he could be better even more down the line at 1.5 miles. So I just think that Alpine Trail is the one to have a close look at. I'm not saying it would be my final selection because we don't know what the final declarations are. I'll be surprised if Wimbledon Hawkeye, even with the 2 runs under his belt, including a second in the Craven and fifth in the 2000 Guineas will be good enough to reverse form with the Lion and Winter. The likes of Pride of Arras, Tuscan Hills, nice horses, but whether they'll be good enough at this level, I'm not sure. I think the Godolphin Runner, Alpine Trail, is interesting. They do have another one in their Devil's Advocate, but I think he's going to have to really improve by a great amount to be competitive. So for me, on day 2, in the feature race, really looking forward to seeing the Lion in Winter, but he might be vulnerable first time back with the Derby, maybe more of the target, almost certainly. And so Alpine Trail, this could be his moment to shine. We'll see in the Dante on Thursday. We're moving on to the third and final day of the Dante meeting on Friday, the 16th of May. Again, as I've said about the earlier 2 days, there really is no rain in the forecast, so it's going to be quick ground. I'm sure York will be putting a bit of water on. Hopefully they won't overwater, and the genuine quick ground horses will be able to have their moment. Now, it's a good day's racing is day 3, but it's not as good, I don't think, as the first 2. There's a listed event that is quite interesting, but let's just focus on the main race on Friday. The 3:45 is the 1 3/4 Boodles Yorkshire Cup, and it's Group 2. And at the 5-day stage, there are 10 runners entered, and there's lots of old favourites here doing battle. And it's going to be always great to see some of these real old favourites showing up again. Now, the one that is likely to go off favourite, assuming he does take his chances, John and Thady Gosden's Sweet William, who's a very, very good stayer. He's rated 117. He won last season. He won at Sandown in the Henry II Stakes, and he also won at Doncaster in the Doncaster Cup. But around those 2 victories, he had 3 placed efforts each and every time behind the mighty Kyprios. So he'll be absolutely delighted that Kyprios isn't entered for the Yorkshire Cup on Friday this coming week. He's a horse who goes well on a decent surface, but he is just ever so slightly vulnerable, this Sweet William, on fast ground. And also, he was beaten first time out last year when expected to score at Ascot and Sagaro Stakes, beaten by Coltrane. So a little bit like the Lion in Winter, who I spoke of on day 2, it might be that Sweet William could be vulnerable in the Yorkshire Cup. Now, there's plenty of other good horses that could potentially show up. The likes of Continuous, who's been a really classy horse in his time now, a 5-year-old. Remember, he's a Group 1 winner. Nakil is a 4-year-old for Owen Burrows. If she doesn't run earlier in the week, she might show up for this race. And if she does show up for it, taking on the older horses could be a very, very interesting contender, especially given the form of the Burrows horses. But although I'm not one normally to go mad about the Godolphin's horses, they do have 2 real stars that could potentially show up. Trollemon is one of them for the Gosdens. He was second to Kyprios in the Ascot Gold Cup, remember, and he's a very good horse on his day, a 7-year-old now, but I think his stable companion, the other 7-year-old, Rebel's Romance, is the one that I would probably take on Sweet William with, because we know he really goes well on fast ground. He won over in the US last November in the Breeders' Cup Turf, over 1.5 miles. That was a terrific effort. He's already won this season out in the Gulf and the Amir Trophy over nearly 1.5 miles. And then he went, of course, to Maidan for the Shima Classic, top class 1.25 mile horses, and ran a very good 4th there behind Danon de Seal. Now, he's trying a new trip here, but if ever there's the right track to try it on and the right kind of race, this is probably it. So he won't lack for fitness. As we know, Sweet William's been off for 7 months. Rebel's Romance has only been off for 6 weeks. So I think with Will Buick on board, if he does take his chance, then you might want to have a really good look at Rebel Romance, because he could be the one to carry off the Yorkshire Cup if the race doesn't cut up too badly, and if he's allowed to have his chance for Charlie Appleby. So that's my look at the Yorkshire Cup, the final of the 3 days of the Dante Festival. There is one more big race to come, though, in the week ahead, and I'll be coming to that in a few moments' time as we head to Newbury. And so to Newbury on Saturday, and a quick glance ahead, because we're some little way out from this race, to what is always one of the first big, exciting mile events of the season for the older horses. This is the Boyle Sports Lockinge Stakes Group 1 over the straight mile at Newbury. Now, at the time of this recording, nearly a week out from the race, there are still 20 runners declared on what is expected to be good to firm ground, although I understand they're expecting thunderstorms potentially in the south of England Sunday into Monday, and if that gets into the ground, it might just take the sting out of it. Now, this is a terrific race, and they've priced up Rosalian for Richard Hannon as favourite. He, of course, only beaten once last season when second to Notable Speech in the 2,000 guineas. He went on to beat his stable companion Harton in the Irish 2,000 guineas after that, showing a cracking turn of fortune. He did the same to Henry Longfellow in the St James's Palace Stakes at Royal Ascot after that, but we haven't seen him for 11 months. As is well documented, he met with a setback. Richard Hannon decided to give him time, and so it's going to be interesting to see if he's up to coming back and making a winning return. The vibes from Hannon's Yard are pretty positive, but he was beaten first time up last season, and so it's not beyond the bounds of a possibility he might just find a horse that is fitter or just better suited to the way the race pans out. Now, one that a lot of people have been speaking about is Roger Teal's runner, Dancing Gemini. No fitness worries. He was very progressive last season, ended with that fourth place to the mighty Charon in the QE2 at Ascot on soft ground, but he goes perfectly well on a decent surface. He wouldn't want it too fast, though. His wins this season coming on good to soft ground at Doncaster and good ground at Sandown last time out, where he really did impress in beating Tam Farner in the Bet 365 mile. If the rains don't come, that might just make him a little vulnerable. Tam Farner, as I mentioned, second to Dancing Gemini. She was third, of course, in the QE2 at the end of last season, having beaten in Spiral on a previous start at Newmarket in the Sun Chariot Stakes. And there's that dark horse, isn't there? This Sardinian Warrior of Jonathan Gosden's. We just don't know how good this horse is. He's won his last four, three of them on the all-weather, including a handicap, and then stepping up to beat the very smart Docklands in the Paradise Stakes at Ascot a few weeks ago. The fact that Jonathan Gosden are thinking of running him straight up into the Group 1 from a listed race suggests they think this horse is progressing very fast. And if he does run, then he'd be one that you want to very seriously consider, I would say. A bigger price is Jonathan Gosden also have Friendly Soul, who's on a four-timer after ending last season with wins in Group 3, Group 2, and then the Group 1 Prix de l'Opera Longines at Longchamp in October. Harten, who of course is a cracking miler and only just missed out in the Irish 2,000 guineas last season and was third in the 2,000 guineas at Newmarket a year ago. He was a bit below par on his reappearance, but maybe he just needed it more, and I wouldn't rule out a big show from him. But I do think that if he shows up, then last year's 2,000 guineas winner, Notable Speech, could be the one to get the better of Rosalian. Again, he beat him by a length and a half at Newmarket last year. Then he got slammed by Rosalian in the St James's Palace Stakes when he really didn't run his race for whatever reason, and bounced back after that to win the Sussex Stakes, beating Maljoum. He's a tricky little horse, really, is Noble Speech. Very, very talented. Soft ground is an absolute no-no. He doesn't want that. He was only beaten a length at the end of the season last year in the Breeders' Cup Mile. He's a horse that can be ready first time out. And I just think that given the fact that up his horses are flying, he might be the one to have on your side. But it does promise to be a cracking renewal. If the rains don't come and the ground is pretty quick, then I think we might see a field of maybe only 7 or 8 runners. We often see many more in the Lockinge, but that might not be the case. Whatever happens, this coming week, with those 3 days at York on the Knavesmire, including the Musidora on the opening day, the Dante Stakes on day 2 and the Yorkshire Cup on day 3, it's going to be terrific racing with lots of pointers going forward to Royal Ascot, that isn't very far away, and of course the Epsom Derby meeting coming up before that, and of course Saturday with the Group 1 Lockinge Stakes. We'll be looking ahead to so many of the big meetings here on this channel, and I hope you will be joining us once again for our next bulletin, which won't be at all far away. And you'll be very pleased to hear that Izzy Phillips will be back for that one. Bye-bye for now.